Chapter 1. Introduction. For the casual observer, the rise to prominence of mixed martial arts, MMA, likely seems like a relatively recent development. After all, it was not all that long ago that boxing was the most prominent sport in which competitors engaged in one-on-one combat, while MMA operated on the fringes in terms of the mainstream public consciousness. Since the turn of the century, however, there has been a major shift in the popularity of MMA, with organizations like the UFC bringing the spectacle to a wider audience while engaging an entirely new generation of fans and future fighters. While the surge in popularity of the UFC can be traced back to the debut of The Ultimate Fighter in 2005, the truth of the matter is that mixed martial arts has existed in some form for centuries. Despite the fact that the term MMA was not even coined until the early 1990s, historians point out that the early Greek Olympic Games featured a sport called pankration, which was introduced into the games as early as 648 BC. This blend of boxing and wrestling was essentially contested without any rules, with the only exception being a ban on biting and eye gouging. Of course, pankration only served as the forerunner to the MMA of today, and the similarities between the two sports are largely conceptual in nature. The fact that the concept itself has survived century after century only underscores the idea that we are naturally drawn to sports that satisfy our inborn desire for a straightforward form of physical competition, in which two combatants must use superior physical prowess, skill, and strategy to best their opponent. The pure simplicity of the concept is one of the many reasons that MMA has enjoyed such a long and rich history spanning nearly all continents and cultures. Perhaps this is the reason for the sport's rapid rise to prominence in recent years, but it is important to remember that this seemingly sudden and massive growth in popularity is a result of a centuries-long incubation period followed by a stylistic evolution that largely took place over the last century or so. The sport simply would not exist in its current form had it not been for the Greeks passing the sport of pankration on to the Romans, and its current practitioners can look back to a number of important and innovative figures that shaped the sport into its contemporary form. Dana White, the president of UFC, has called Bruce Lee the father of MMA, pointing to Lee's development of Jeet Kune Do as stemming from a philosophy that preached adaptability over style and valued formlessness above all else. While White certainly has a point, there are many figures who came both before and after Lee that likewise deserve a share of the credit, including Edward William Barton Wright, Theodore Roosevelt, Mitsuya Maeda, the Gracie family, and the many competitors who engaged in the crossover competitions that helped popularize the sport in the modern era of live televised sporting events. In this book, I will cover the entire history of MMA from its beginnings in Greece and Rome to the contemporary era that has been defined by the UFC and its many popular and immediately recognizable champions. Each chapter will either briefly touch on an essential era of the sport's development, or will discuss the contributions of a specific individual or group in advancing MMA as a sport or a concept. Since the modern era has been so thoroughly documented in concert with the rise in the sport's popularity, this book will focus primarily on the period of time leading up to the contemporary era, closing with a look at the role the debut of The Ultimate Fighter played in bringing the sport into the hearts and minds of so many MMA enthusiasts.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.